Hello, dear colleagues. My name is Ivan Selikhovkin. I'm here to talk about project management, team management, and business management, and how all of the above are connected. Just a couple of minutes for me to introduce myself and to describe the topic in general terms. I am a project manager with 15 years of experience. I am in charge of a project office, and I've been given presentations and training sessions for our PMI branch in St. Petersburg, which I've been the president for many years. And as head of project and head of the project office, I'm going to speak about the connection between project management, team management, and business management. I did not secure approval from the company I'm working for, so I'm not going to give you the name of the company, but I'm just going to give you the idea. It's working in pharma, and it's working with a very well-known project right now, but no names again. So what value does my presentation bring? I believe that many of our colleagues here would like to hear more about the work of a team lead or a project manager or a team manager. My topic is a little aside, it's a bit higher, it's a bird's eye view, so to say. I'm going to attempt to explain the difference between project management, business management, and team management, and the interrelation between the three notions. I'm going to take you one level higher to the level of the project office, because in my opinion, the project office is the very structure that is in charge of this correlation to coordinate business interests with team management and with project management. Hopefully, my presentation will lead you to the following conclusions. Why businesses and companies make the decisions they make about launching projects or stopping them, what approach to project management or product management you should choose, and what approaches you should avoid, what difficulties you may encounter. And this is why I'm going to take you to a virtual project office. I'm going to offer my view of what a project office does and what impact it has on teams and project managers. So let's take a closer look. How does any company work, in my opinion? A company with developed project management, a large company, maybe 150 strong, maybe larger. So companies this big gradually switch towards the following model. We have owners, shareholders, we have the top management, the C-suite so-called, then we have program managers and project managers, and then we have project teams, or just teams. What chain is that? What kind of a chain is that? Why is it directed only to one side? This chain shows the process of strategic decision-making, and it also shows the reluctance, the counteraction to these decisions. Say, owners and shareholders, in my experience, I don't try to be objective here, or I don't try to say something scientific. In my experience, owners and shareholders generate the ideas. I have hardly ever met company owners who don't have any ideas, or who have fewer ideas than their business can process. These people are always bursting with ideas and options, potential directions of development, and probably even more than their business can handle. So this is where portfolio managers live. In this chain, most of them are top managers. They are at the confluence between top managers and program managers. The C-suite also generate ideas, but most of the ideas come from the owners. So when the owners bring their ideas to the top managers, they serve as a filter, as a barrier that rejects something that can't be done. Top managers dismiss unrealistic ideas, and this is where tension emerges. The top management brings ideas to program managers and project managers. This is the next level of filtering because program and project managers are in charge of risks. They assess risks, they give feedback, and they say what they can do and what they can't. And eventually, the ideas make their ways to project teams. And the objective of a team lead is to filter through tasks that are relevant to their team and that are irrelevant, that are in line with the team's primary activity, that is. So this is more or less the chain that exists in every big company. Of course, this sometimes goes both ways because some ideas come from managers or from team leads, but the majority of ideas, strategic ideas, come from the right, from company owners. And at each confluence, there is sort of a tension emerging. Some of the ideas reach the stage of realization. So I was going to take all of you to the project office to understand how this works in a company. So where's the project office? It is here. So sometimes the project office includes some of the owners. In most cases, most top managers. Of course, there are portfolio managers, there are program managers, and some of project managers as well. This is the kind of structure that a project office normally has. So the task, the objective of the project office is to filter through ideas and to select approaches to realizing these ideas. We're going to reach a more practical level, the hands-on level with the teams in a couple of minutes, but now let's continue with the bird's eye view. What does a project office do as a structure? If you Google project office, and if you start reading books about it, you will realize that it is an area of knowledge in the making. There are a lot of categories, there are a lot of types, there are knowledge-based project offices, enterprise-type project offices. But in my experience, again, in my experience that counts many years of professional work, a meaningful project office is capable of the following functions. First of all, selection of ideas, filters all the ideas that owners may have. Then for the ideas selected, this project office selects the methodologies to implement them and organizes the work within the organization with the use of said methodologies. So it kind of programs the organization. If you work in IT, it's quite easy for you to understand the metaphor. If you're a part of a project that develops something rather simple, you probably can imagine that there is some kind of a very experienced professional, seasoned professional within the company who knows how everything works. However, as soon as you begin doing something technology intensive, like a CRM system or logistics or finance, HR system, and so on, even one module is difficult to wrap your head about, and one person is incapable of taking stock of everything and controlling everything because technologies and methodologies keep changing. So companies that have a complex structure always need some sort of a committee that would control the reviews and the documenting. And this is what a project office does. When a company has enough managers and enough business areas, the management of this entire structure and the methodologies we use, be it Scrum, Kanban, and so on, and all the multitude of projects that we engage in, all of the above are impossible to control individually. So one head is not enough, and this is when we need a project office. Let's take a closer look at how it works. Another function of the project
Вот. Ну и
office,
еще одна функция проектного офиса — это,
in
собственно,
addition
помимо того,
to
чтобы
ideas,
формировать идеи,
methodologies, and
подобрать методологии
organization,
правильно. Вся моя презентация сейчас будет про подбор методологии правильно. Это то,
is
что касается
to
непосредственно вас. Еще одна
train
важная
and
функция, о
motivate
которой я вообще не буду говорить,
managers.
но упомяну, что она важна и
And
будет
I'm
очень
going
всегда —
to
это
return to
подбор
this
правильных
function a little
менеджеров,
later.
да, и
So
работа с
offering
ними, и
support
поддержка
to
их для
managers
того,
to
чтобы
keep
все
them
это стало
efficient
строго и полетело.
is very important
Вот
to the work
это
of a project
гидролекого
office.
нормального проектного офиса, который, ну, может выполнять функцию, а не просто носить одно название.
So now let's delve deeper.
И поехали на
We're
рынок.
going
Первый
to
пункт.
explore the
Буквально один
first
слайд мы видим,
item,
а во
first
второй мы
bullet
вот
point,
сейчас
and then
оставшееся
say
время
a
я
few
планирую
words
поговорить
about the
про
second
подбор
one.
методологии, потому что это ровно то, с чем вы имеете дело, работая в компании
Okay,
лидер, как
speaking
менеджер.
about the
Смотрите.
filtering function.
Насчет фильтрации. Я уже почти все
To
сказал,
sum up
но
what I've been saying,
для закрепления всего один слайд.
again, a project office is
Повторюсь,
always
проектный офис
a
должен
sort
обязательно
of a
выступать таким
pump that
насосом,
pumps
который
out
выкачивает из компании
excessive
лишнее, если
ideas
проводить
out of the
аналогию с
company.
живой клеткой. Ну,
I
представляете, да, вот
like to draw
организм состоит из живых
biological
клеток, как правило, это клетка, которая находится
metaphors.
в водной
Any company
среде,
is a
и
body,
любая живая
is
клетка,
a
она устроена
cell,
так, что в нее стремится зайти, ну,
and
либо в
water
нее, либо из
is
нее
bound
стремится либо зайти,
to
либо выйти
find its
вода.
way into a
Это
cell.
вот
This is from the
основы
school course
биологии
of
школьного, в
biology.
общем, курса.
So,
И клетка
cell
живет благополучно и
is
существует до тех пор,
functional as
пока
long as the pumps in
пронизывающие ее
its
мембрану
membrane
насосы
are
справляются. Они
functional
либо
too,
откачивают избыток
because
воды, либо
they
закачивают
pump
излишек
water
воды.
into the
Если воды
cell and
стало
out of the
слишком
cell.
много, то называется то, что начинается то, что
The
называется
project
кризис, клетка
office
лопается и так
is
далее.
this
Проектный
collective
офис,
pump
он
that controls the
откачивает
amount of water within
из
our living
программ,
cell.
менеджеров проектов, уж тем более из команд,
So
лишние
if
идеи,
ideas
которые
are
рискуют войти
excessive
в
and
проект
they
и
risk
перегрузить его.
overloading the company,
Как
we
это
need
часто
to
устроено?
remove them.
Ну, например, в таком виде. То есть,
Say, no,
как бы проектный офис не организовал
this
работу по
filtration
фильтрации, это,
work
скорее всего, будет
resembles a
напоминать
funnel that
подобную
you
во
can see
втором
on the
блоке.
slide.
Я привожу очень известный пример. Это FEL, Front-End Loading, так
I like
называемый. Модель,
to use the
по которой
following
компания
model to
отбирает
describe this
проекты. Ну, вот
process.
она такая, да.
Say
Есть
we
какая-то
have
ворона,
this
какая-то
funnel
стадия, где
and we have gates. We have
на
a
рассмотрение
huge
поступает
influx of
неимоверное количество
projects
проектов.
into the
Очень
company.
большое количество.
All of the
Все
ideas
идеи
generated
высшего
by
руководства,
owners and
ну, не
top
обязательно высшего,
managers
пришедшие с нами
need
из других стран,
consideration.
попадают на
We
рассмотрение.
filter
Мы их
them.
тут фильтруем потихонечку.
This is the top management
Обычно это
level
вот
in most
уровень
cases, or maybe portfolio
топ-менеджмента,
managers.
менеджмента, уровень
The
руководителей портфелей.
projects that don't
Очевидно,
match our line of
непосредственно
business
проекты
get rejected
отбраковываются
and
и
we get
остаются
a smaller list.
более узкий список. Затем
Then
переходим
we
в следующую
start
стадию. Обычно это стадия
securing
согласования уже
approval
с
from
потенциальными
potential project managers and program
программ, с потенциальными
managers.
менеджерами проектов,
And we remove
где из перечня
absolutely
проектов мы
anything that is
убираем
excessive from the
абсолютно уже
list
все,
and we
которые нам не
only
подходят, и оставляем
leave the
только
best
наиболее
business
выгодные для
opportunities.
компании проекты. Эти проекты утверждаются и
And
продвигаются,
finally,
ну и, собственно, вот
the projects that we
эти проекты
decide to
потом закончены,
launch
ну,
get
появляется
teams
менеджер
and
проекта,
get
назначается
project
команда, и
managers
вперед.
assigned.
Вот смотрите, коллеги, что это означает?
What does it
Это
mean?
означает,
It
что
means that
если
if you have trouble
ваша
sleeping at
команда плохо
night,
спит по ночам,
and if
и
you as
если
a
вы как
manager
менеджер
are in
будете
charge of
не
more than
на
2 or 3
2-3 проекта,
projects,
тут надо быть, конечно,
it is
осторожным, в
of course,
зависимости
it of
от
course depends on
отрасли,
the
от индустрии,
industry.
оптимальное
I
число
believe
проектов
this
на
number
одного
is
менеджера
different for
меняется.
different industries,
А,
but I
Но
believe
почти
that
всегда оно
if a
около
manager is in
14-20
charge of
проектов
2 or 3
колеблется. Если у
projects
менеджера всего
or
один проект,
more,
обычно, как правило, он недогружен.
say
Если у него
5 or more,
больше, чем
it
5
means that
проектов,
you're
то гораздо
overloaded
больше. Как
simply
правило, он
by the
перегружен. Просто потому
scope
что
of
коммуникации на
communications
проектах нельзя
that you have to
снизить ниже
maintain.
некого предела, если у вас
3
остальные
is a
члены
good number
проектного
of
менеджера
projects for a
справляются.
manager.
3 это
4
хорошая
is a
цифра,
bit
4
over the
уже
top.
многовато.
5
Это
is
следующая
way too
категория.
many.
Так вот, если вы как
If
менеджер
you're in charge of too many
тянете на
projects
себе какое-то
and
огромное
your
число
team is
проектов, и
forced
ваша команда
to
регулярно
work
работает
late,
сверхурочно,
it is
и
highly
пытается
likely that
разобраться, в
the
чем
project
причина, но
office
очень
isn't doing
вероятно,
its
что
job.
проектный офис не
You either
управится.
don't
Скорее
have
всего,
one in
либо
your
нету,
company,
ну,
or
или вот
people who perform
те
the
люди,
functions of the
которые взяли
project
на себя
office
функцию проектного офиса, не
didn't
отрабатывают.
do the right job with the filtering.
Плохо справились с
This
фильтрованием.
happens
Особенно вот в
very
России, то, что я
frequently in
наблюдаю, это
Russia.
частая
I've seen it with my
болезненная
own
проблема.
eyes. We are
Мы
scared of
очень
saying
боимся
no to our
говорить начальству
bosses.
«нет». Помните, что, как
You
Сергей
probably
Архипенков, там, например, мой коллега, любил
recall the quote
приводить
that you can
эту
only
метафору, что
lean
опереться
against
можно только на
someone
того, кто
who
оказывает
is
сопротивление
pushing
по
back.
законам физики.
So if
Если в
nobody
компании
pushes back
идеям
the
высшего
ideas
руководства
of the
никто не оказывает
management, if
сопротивления, никто не говорит
nobody
«слушайте,
is
стойте, прежде
ready
чем за
to
это браться,
reject
давайте
it,
подумаем,
and to be
можем
realistic
ли мы
about
потянуть в разумные
deadlines,
сроки,
it
значит,
means
перегружены
that
окажутся все, и
this
плохо станет
mechanism
бизнесу.
isn't
Бизнес будет
functional.
держать своих идей,
It means
идеи
that everybody is
делаются в
working
долгосрок,
under a lot of
возможны
stress
дедлайны, все
and
перегружены, люди вымирают,
gets
куча увольнений и так
burnt
далее.
out really quickly. quickly.
Это фильтрующая функция. Проект офис должен справляться. Теперь смотрите.
So the
Самое,
main
мне кажется,
point here,
насущное, актуальное.
how to
Подбор
select a
методологии. Как
methodology
сделать
to make
так,
things work.
чтобы мы опирались на
What's a good
правильные
way of
методологии.
choosing the
Где
right
именно эта
methodology
финтовая
for this particular
провалилась,
idea
там
that you
на
have
реализацию
selected
идут какое-то
from
количество
a
идей,
multitude of similar ideas?
которые все объективно нужно делать. Как именно мы будем делать их?
I'm not
Я
saying
не
that I know
претендую
the right
вести
answer,
объемлющий
but I'm
разбор.
going to
Я на примере
speak
трех
about three
богатых подходов:
approaches
PMI,
as
Scrum и
an
Kanban.
example:
Просто расскажу.
PMI, Scrum,
Да?
and
Что
Kanban.
такое PMI подход? PMI подход — это подход, который опирается в целом на PM Book.
PMI is an
На момент
approach
нашего с
based
вами
on the
разговора
PM
актуальная
book,
версия PM Book, свода
the
знаний
sixth
Project Management
edition
Institute.
as of today,
Это шестая версия
and the
PM Book,
seventh
свода
edition
знаний
is
управления
about to
проектами.
see the light of
Вот-вот
day.
выйдет седьмая,
Hopefully,
ее
it will
пока
happen
нету,
soon.
ждем, скоро не
Then
будет.
we'll say a few words about the
Поговорим про
Scrum
второй фреймворк — это
framework and
канбановый.
the Kanban method.
Я
We will
обращу
have
ваше
to start
внимание,
from
нам
scratch.
придется начать с азов.
I'm
Я
sure
понимаю,
that,
что просто
dear
из
colleagues,
вас
you know
хорошо
a
знакомых
lot
с этими
about these
азовами.
approaches,
Придется потерпеть
but
пару минут, когда
I'm going to
мы
start with
отрегулируемся
the
на определенные
basics
азы,
so
а
that
дальше мы
everyone
устремимся на
gets the
выход
gist of
применения.
it.
Вот
So, what's the
чем
difference
отличаются
between
с
the
точки зрения проектного офиса, с точки
perspective of the
зрения
project
руководителя
office
проекта
and the
девелопера?
product owner? A project office
Проектный офис —
is
это
a
вредный
picky
покупатель.
customer,
Представьте, что вы
say at a
приходите в
shop.
магазин,
So there's a
не знаю,
sales
обувь купить,
assistant at a
и
shop,
вам
and
продавец, там
they
оказывается, что
start
есть
recommending,
продавец-консультант, и
say,
он вам
a pair of
нахваливает на
shoes to
позиции
you
эту обувь,
and
а дальше
enumerating
карма
the
перечисляет
advantages.
преимущества. Как
So one of my
промерить,
favorite
один из моих любимых
techniques
приемов,
against
да,
such
с
sales
подобными
assistants
продавцами, когда
is
продавец
to
мне говорит:
ask
хочу, я его
about
беру. Если нет, я
disadvantages.
спрашиваю его о недостатках.
So
Говорю:
what's
слушай, а
wrong with
расскажи
this
мне,
beautiful pair of
в чем
shoes?
минусы этой замечательной пары
If
обуви.
the sales
Если ответ
assistant
что-то вроде: у нее нет
says
минусов,
there are no
тогда,
disadvantages, then
наверное,
I'm
доверять ему
not
я не буду.
taking them.
Если минусы, очевидно,
If
соблюдены
they
для галочки,
enumerate
то тоже я соглашусь.
disadvantages that are too
Такой
serious,
проектный
then
офис —
I'll
это вредный
probably decide
покупатель,
against
который,
buying as
когда
well.
смотрит на любой из
So this is
подходов,
what a
все время
project office
спрашивает себя,
does.
какие у него
The project
минусы,
office
почему он нам может не
asks
подойти.
about the
Сейчас поясню.
drawbacks
Давайте
of an
по порядку.
idea or project.
Начнем с подхода
Let's
Scrum.
start with the Scrum framework.
Потерпите,
Dear
коллеги, 3
colleagues,
минуты.
just
Я
3 minutes of your
откалибруюсь и
time. I'm
напомню, в
going to
чем
give you
основа
the
Scrum.
basics
Почти
of
все мы
Scrum.
наверняка ее
I'm
знаем, поэтому
sure
я
that
очень коротко.
you all know about
На
it,
чем
but
стоит этот
just to be
подход?
on the safe
На
side.
том, что
We
мы
save
экономим время
time on
на
long-term
долгосрочном
planning,
планировании. Вместо того,
and
чтобы делать
instead of
долгие планы и давать экспертные
offering your
оценки в
expert
начале,
opinion in the beginning,
вместо этого мы обращаемся к
we turn
какому-то
to a
представителю
representative
пользователя,
of
называем его продукт
the
оунером.
user,
Мы заводим
say a
такую
product
фигуру, которая для
owner,
нас
who
является
is the
адвокатом
advocate of
пользователя.
users
И
in our case,
спрашиваем
and
у
we
этой фигуры,
ask
чего бы вам
this
хотелось. И эта
figure
фигура нам накидывает
what we
тезис. Он
need to get
объясняет,
from the product.
например, мы создаем интернет-магазин, и он
So
говорит:
this
в моем
product owner says
интернет-магазине
that, say, we need
должны быть там, я не
an
знаю,
online shop,
веб-страница,
and an
форма
online
логина,
shop
форма
needs
интеграции, сервис
integration
интеграции
with
с
banking
банковскими
cards,
картами и так
needs
далее.
the landing
Все
page,
это
and we
мы
write down
записываем
all
и
of the
складываем в такое
requirements and
большое
put
ведро,
it
которое вот сейчас на
on the
слайде.
bucket that
Кружочки
you
в
can
этом ведре —
see.
это
So
хотелки
these are
продукт оунера.
the things that a product owner wants.
Само ведро называется backlog, продукт backlog. Это вы
So
все
this
знаете.
bucket is called
Дальше,
the
что
product
делает Scrum?
backlog.
Он говорит: давайте мы
So what are we
оценим.
going to
Ну,
do
что мы будем
next?
оценивать? Не продолжительность этих
We're
работ, а
going to speak
трудоемкость.
about the
Грубо говоря, мы
execution
находим
time
самую
for
простую
all of
работу
the above.
и
Say we
принимаем ее
choose
трудоемкость за
the
единицу.
simplest
И вот
task
эту
and
работу мы
we
оценим в единичку.
assess it
Это
as
уже
one.
story point. Ну, я сейчас очень упрощенно, да? Например, какая-нибудь
And
работа в 2 раза сложнее, чем самая
there
простая.
is a
Ее можно
different
оценить в 2 story
task that
point.
is a bit more
Какая-то
complex
работа
and
в
it will
3 раза
take more
сложнее,
time.
но в 3 раза более
Then there will
трудоемкая, чем
be
самая
a
простая. 3 story point и
labor-consuming
так
task
далее.
number
И
3
вот
and an
такие
even
оценки
harder task
всем
number 4.
хотелкам,
So
всем
we
элементам
assign
продукт
points
бэклога мы
to
присваиваем.
each
Ну и
backlog
затем мы
element.
потихонечку начинаем работать. Я заканчиваю объяснять, ну, калиброваться,
And
как
then
сказать.
we get down to executing certain
Мы
parts of
говорим
the
продукт
project.
оунеру: мы сейчас, выбери, пожалуйста, из всех хотелок самые
So we
приоритетные
ask the
для
product
тебя.
owner to
Мы
choose
их
the
возьмем
most important
в течение так
elements,
называемого спринта,
and
обычно
then
длится
we
неделя,
dedicate the
поработаем,
first sprint,
и
normally 2
мы
weeks,
возьмем столько, сколько за этот спринт мы можем
to
переварить. И
executing the
принесем
most
тебе итог.
important elements.
Команда, указанные продукт оунером хотелки, берет в реализацию,
So
реализует
then
и
the
приходит вам,
team
показывает через 2 недели: говорит:
can
смотри,
show
мы
you
сделали
the
вот эту главную
results,
страницу
the
сайта,
main
но
page of the
последние
website,
40
the
была
formula,
написана
the
неправильно.
data. Are
Нормально?
you
Говорит:
satisfied?
нормально,
Okay,
допустим,
okay. So let's
хорошо.
continue.
Принимаем, вы
Let's
согласились на
cancel it.
компромисс. Следующий
Next,
спринт. Что
what
за
can we
следующая
see
повесточка? Мы
here?
берем, уходим в
We
реализацию, приносим, показываем:
bring
смотри,
the
вот мы еще добавили
integration.
интеграцию с банковскими картами, еще
Is
что-то.
it okay
Нормально?
for you?
Нет,
No, it's
ненормально,
not
говорит продукт оунер. Я
okay.
вообще не этого
I
хотел, вы меня неправильно
didn't
поняли.
want this. Okay, calm
Ладно,
down.
спокойно. Я сейчас
I would
опять
like
очень
to
упрощенно.
simplify that.
Переделываем.
Are you
Вот теперь нормально?
okay with it
Нормально.
right
Следующий
now?
шаг.
Okay.
Четвертый
Number
спринт. Берем
4,
следующий в
and
реализацию и
so
так
on and
далее.
so forth.
Я, конечно,
Of
очень
course, this is
упрощаю, но
all very
подходит такой
simple,
скрам устроен,
but
так
they are the
примерно.
common examples of scrap,
По крайней мере, если
or the
операция на стандарт.
operations are standard. And this is the Scrum framework. I'm not going to go deep into details of Scrum, but the main advantage is the fast reaction, fast feedback. Every 2 weeks, we give something useful that can be applied, and we are collecting the feedbacks as well. So I think this approach is pretty good one. Now, let us imagine that we are a main consumer which has filtered the ideas before with top managers, and now they have a realistic list that they can implement. Now they're worried about the results and they are starting looking for the best options, the best approach. Okay, let me show you. They are the thesis, which are very important. The team is not touched as long as it's running, that people self-organize around work, and it's important to keep the supplies coming. So now about the main consumer. Why can't we use always the Scrum? And now we're making the questions. Why something doesn't work here? You can see the black book of Scrum. Probably you are quite interested in that. It's quite easy explaining. I will send you later the link, but I would like to attract your ideas and attention to the main things. You can't build a bridge by Scrum. Let me explain to you. I just gathered this experience from my previous work. Now, the company where I worked before, it dealt, well, they had some different projects, IT experts, and we were working with a tomographer. And when a tomographer works, there is a human being inside, so this machine operates and processes the data. This is the data in DICOM format, and all the data, that includes 2 gigabytes. So can you imagine how many data they have? And the server is limited. This they had a PAX server, and this server, this is a standard acronym, and they collect the data, they keep the data, and they're always ready to share the data. So are you interested in the results of the Smith? Okay, here you are. And what actually, why have we failed? Because Scrum works good over the product with a good functionality. I would like to get back to the previous slide. What is the main idea when we're talking about the screens? Every 2 weeks, it's very important. They get the best results, not just ideas or a draft. So we have started the design in the database, and we can have the preliminary results. No, it doesn't work this way. They're all very useful things, and only then we can collect a very good feedback. And thus we're also explaining how it will work. And the main idea of Scrum, the main foresight, will be only when our functionality will grow. Yes, of course, at the very beginning it won't be easy, but it takes some time, and every sprint is adding something. Like, for example, when I'm talking about a game, a computer game, new characters, new weapons, new levels. So, Fact Server, what can we give to the client? It is constructed and designed in the way that all the requirements have been satisfied. It must be effective, it must be quick,
Все, чтобы он был надежен, не
It
ломался.
must be
У
safe
него нету ни одного
and
элемента чисто
reliable,
графического. Есть только консоль админа,
minimum
которой нужно
graphics,
3 параметра установить, и все.
and
Разложить его на
it
полезные
must be
закачанные
very
кусочки,
useful for
которые
the
можно по одному давать и собирать в ворк-спейсе,
customers.
невозможно. Все, что мы можем сделать,
We
это
cannot
повторить.
dismantle
Мы
it.
начали думать над архитектурой базы
And
данных. И вот у нас первое там,
thus
громадье,
we
что мы
have the
собрали. А
first
вот второе громадье.
table.
А вот сейчас мы тут что-то начали
Then we
делать,
have
что
additional
сегодня давно пока
servers.
пользоваться ими нельзя.
And what
В
is
чем смысл
actually
разбивания по
the
спринтам?
thing, the
Самая
idea of this?
посильная черта скрам в этот момент
The main
исчезает. Вы
idea
можете
is that
искусственно нарезать
artificially
спринты,
you can
но
have them, but
полезного
the
результата не
final
получится.
result you won't be
Нельзя
able
построить
to
мост по
collect
скраму.
them.
Точно по той
Again,
же
you
самой причине.
cannot
Вы
build
строите
a
мост
bridge
через
by
реку,
Scrum,
он либо имеет
because
смысл
if
весь
you build
целиком,
a bridge
либо
over
ничего
a
не отдавайте
river,
заказчику. Что вы
there
покажете
is
ему
a
в первом спринте,
sense
во втором?
only
Сваи,
when
торчащие из
it
воды.
is
Часть
able
перекрытого
to
моста, по
reach
которому
another
нельзя
part of the
перебраться на
river,
другой берег. Примерно
another
на это ограничение
beach.
можно услышать
So
возражение, что ну нет, давайте мы в первом
the
спринте
same
дадим
situation
заказ
is here.
продукт оунеру паром, и он на нем начнет плавать.
If
А
the
мы пока
bridge
построим мост.
is built
А
only
если
up to the
вы
middle
ставите
of the
сперва ему
river,
паром,
it
а
won't
потом
work.
выносит паром,
There is
выкидываете на
no
помойку
sense
и
at all.
грузите его на мост,
It's
это
not
не
a
скрам.
Scrum
Это
again.
два разных
They're two
проекта.
different
Еще раз,
projects.
скрам,
So
услышьте.
please listen to my
Вспомните эту
words. Do
замечательную
you
картинку,
remember the
где
picture
заказчик долго
when
ждет
the
автомобиль,
client, the
и чтобы
customer,
ему долго
is
не ехать,
waiting
сперва
for
его
a
взяли
car
самокат,
for a
потом
long
значит,
time?
велосипед,
First
потом
of
мотоцикл,
all,
потом
he
автомобиль.
gets a car,
Да, проблема этой картинки в том,
a
что каждый
bicycle,
промежуточный
pardon,
результат уходит на помойку.
a
И
bike,
это не скрам, это 4
and
разных
then
проекта. Да?
the car.
Скрам
Again,
работает
this
и
is all
проявляет
about
свои
the
сильные
Scrum.
качества тогда, когда
Only
ваше
when
приращение к продукту на промежуточных стадиях
every
тоже полезно,
stage
ими
is
тоже
very
можно пользоваться.
useful
Если это
to
не так,
obtain the final
задайте
result.
себе вопрос, зачем вы бьетесь за скрам. Проектный офис точно задаст этот вопрос.
So let's move
Дальше.
on.
Ну, я буду
I would
ускоряться.
like
Повторюсь,
to
если я чего-то не успею, можно
accelerate
обсудить еще раз
myself to
экзамен,
move
считайте
on
пример.
because we do not have much time.
Проблема
And the
понять
next
сроки.
step
Ну,
is to
очень коротко, я
understand the
объясню, в чем
timing,
проблема.
the deadlines.
Если у вашего
If you
проекта есть
have the
дедлайн на
deadline at the
старте,
very
то у
beginning,
скрама
that
сложно
is
сложно.
very difficult to
Как
work
устроено прогнозирование
within the
сроков
Scrum.
скрам? Тоже вы наверняка знаете, да? Вот
So
бэклог,
the
вот
sprints
спринты.
and
Как
how to
понять, какую
understand
трудоемкость за один спринт наша команда в
what is
построении
the volume
переваривает?
of work that could be
Поначалу
done.
никак. Это делается
At the
методом
very
ключей.
beginning, it is
Мы
possible to
берем,
understand,
например, у нас спринты
but
двухнедельные. Мы берем
we
какое-то
take
количество задач, которые
several
дают такую
tasks,
емкость, и думаем,
and we
что
think
две
that
недели,
a
наверное, много.
fortnight is enough for us.
Набрали, поработали и выяснили, что это
Then,
было
2 weeks
очень
later,
тяжело.
we
Вот
understand
на
it was
данном слайде
almost impossible.
5
We have 5
единиц,
points
5
here,
поинтов за спринт. Это
and it's
нашей команде
very
далось крайне
difficult
тяжело.
for our
Теперь
team.
будем умнее, следующий спринт возьмем
So,
поменьше.
next time, we're
Взяли 3.
trying only
И
with
выяснилось, что это,
3 of
наоборот, очень
them,
легко. Мы
and it
справились
was
так
pretty
просто, что не
easy.
стоило вообще и заморачиваться.
Okay,
Хорошо,
the
следующий
next
спринт взяли
time,
4, и
the
выяснилось, что
next
вот
term it
нормальный,
was
нормальный темп.
4 of them,
Внимание, вопрос какая?
and how
Как
to
определить
define
мощность нашей команды?
the
То, что называется
velocity of
velocity.
our team. And the
Вот velocity в
velocity
данном случае
now
равна
equals
странно
to
4 или
4
5. То
or
есть считается
5.
в скраме, что velocity должна создавать нагрузку на
So
команду.
that is why
Поэтому наша способность команды переваривать трудоемкость, она
our
4-5
the capacity of our team equals to 4 or 5.
понять, когда мы закончим
And when we
работу
finish
по
the
бэклогу?
work,
Ну,
when
когда
we
мы
fill
нащупали
this
velocity,
velocity,
а это
and it was
произошло спустя
only
2-3
2 or
спринта,
3
это нормальная,
sprints,
кстати, обычная
but
средняя
it's quite okay with
скажем,
this. It's average
величина. То есть за 2-3
value.
спринта вы поймете примерно вашу velocity. Через 2-3
Then,
спринта, то есть через
after
полтора
a
примерно
month and a
месяца, эти
half,
спринты
you
двухнедельные,
will
вы
understand the
поймете
velocity of
скорость,
your
ну,
team,
мощность вашей команды
and you'll be
и
able
сможете
to
сделать
do the
обратный расчет.
calculation. You
Вы
can
можете
share,
поделить оставшуюся трудоемкость в бэклоге на velocity и понять,
and
через сколько
thus
спринтов
you can
его
understand
закончить.
how
Ну,
many
burn down часто
sprints for
используется, так
future
прям
do you
нормально.
need.
Окей, а теперь
So
смотрите,
this was
первая
the first
проблема скрама в
problem
том,
of the
что на
Scrum,
старте
that at the
вы не можете
very
сказать, в
beginning
какие
you
сроки упрется
cannot
ваш
say
бэклог.
what are
Вам
the
нужно
terms.
проработать 2-3
You need to
спринта.
spend
Скрам
some
на это
time on
настаивает.
that
Он говорит,
and
не
to understand
придумывайте.
better how it
Опирайтесь на факт.
functions.
Сперва поработайте, потом давайте прогноз.
So,
То есть,
if at the
если у
very
вашего проекта
beginning
на
you
старте
had
был
a
какой-то дедлайн,
deadline,
на старте ни менеджер, ни
no,
команда не могут
neither
точно за него
manager
закончить. Им нужно
nor
поработать, сработать,
the team
опереться и там
can
дальше двигаться.
tell the
Вот вторая
results
проблема
and the
в том,
terms.
что, смотрите,
The
velocity в
second
скраме, я сейчас не
problem
буду в этом
is,
ударяться, оно
it
чернильным
is
скрамом написано
all,
подробно,
by the
это
way,
строго
written very
командный
good in the
показатель.
books.
Он не считается по людям
This
по
is
отдельности,
another
этого нельзя делать, у
indicators,
вас разрушится
not
атмосфера команды.
connected to people.
Поэтому он считается всегда на команду.
Just let
Представьте,
us
что
imagine there is
что-то
something
случилось, и один
urgent,
ваш сотрудник,
unexpected in
например,
our
уволился
team. For
и
example,
уехал в отпуск.
someone
Или, не дай бог,
goes on
заболел.
vacation or fell sick, or you have a new employee, or someone is left. That is why there are some changes within the team. And what is the velocity of the team? And we don't know, because we need to work further. Then we need to do some corrections. And in our modern world, sometimes people go on vacation, sometimes they are dismissed, and that means that the changes we are facing them every day. And it's not fatal, of course. We shouldn't dramatize, but we should understand whether we are working within the deadline or not. That is why the velocity is very important. And the second problem is to understand the deadline. Once again, I would like to tell you that it is very important to understand the deadlines. But if you have a deadline, and it's quite strict and quite important, you will be asked, is it Scrum? And how to deal with the problem? My favorite topic, the next one, is unattainable cross-functionality. And what is the problem with that? How it works. There are several sprints, and the team is working over the sprints. Let us imagine a very simple IT project. They have analyst, developer, and a tester. They will analyze something, develop something, and test something. So the first sprint is, there is a question. It's quite naive one, but it's quite painful. So at the very beginning of the sprint, they have to work over the tasks. Then they will write a code, and the tester will test. It's very simple. So that means that the analyst has the work to be done, but the developer and tester, they don't. In several days, they have the first task, they're working on that. At the middle of the task, there is a development, and then the tester works really hard. And those guys, they are having rest. Of course, this is not true. There is no a team which works in this way. No one do this. Okay, but there are different roles, and how can they be divided? So the next idea is, first of all, they are analysts, they are taking the first tasks, then the developer includes and working here. And what are the tasks of the tester? Probably they will be late. No, the scheme doesn't work this way, because now we have three teams instead of one. I could continue, of course, the idea and imagine different situations, but everything is written in the book. And the solution is that the developer is the only role in the team, and there are no any other team roles, but this is not true. Scrum, this approach, is applicable to the idea of the T-shape. Slava Pankratov, the colleague of mine, will inform you better about the T-shape. So what is? It means that, very simple definition, if a developer, or let me put it this way, the developer will help to the tester if they do not have enough time. Okay, now let us imagine that the developer does not have sufficient time. That means that the tester and analyst should help them with the programming. Or if we are talking about the design of the interfaces, the problem is that this cross-functionality, Scrum is good when the team is cross-functional, where very many people can understand and can help to solve the problems and to take some tasks. I'm a tester. For example, I'm not very good in programming, but I can give a hand. I can give a help and we can work together. So this is the idea of the T-shape, the cross-functional. And we can work hard, and everyone can give a hand. Once again, there are different projects, and for some projects it's reachable. And Scrum lives inside the department where the positions of people are quite similar. So that is why you have to understand what functionality means. Another thing is connections in backlog are bad. One of the main ideas of Scrum, they are the values of the products and collecting of the feedbacks. So what have to be done? We divide the task, we divide the works in different sprints, and we're thinking about the prioritization, about the priorities. So you have to put, again, just an example of mine, very simply, you have to put the priorities, what is important and relevant to you. We take the things from the top, and we are starting working over that. Thus, we can change the tasks of the padlock and take different things. And that is why it is all transparent for everyone. It's not a bureaucratic scheme to understand how it works. And now let us imagine that in a backlog there are different tasks and they are interconnected and cross-connected. For example, every module depends on other modules. And in backlog you have different relations. And it doesn't matter what kind of priority the client has. As a product owner, they understand what should be done as the next step. And of course, they will start working over the things, how it should be done in the right way. I would like to remind you that there are some relations between the tasks, but if there are too many of such relations, that means that the Scrum will fail. It will be it will fail, and it won't work. It is not bad, it is not good, but the rules of the projects are that if there are too many relations, it will be complicated for you and it will take time. But the idea of the Scrum approach is lost. It doesn't work.
I'm not going to speak about the cursive words, the bullet points that are in italics. It's all in the book, but I'm going to cover a few more points. What I would like to convey is that the only desire to use Scrum is not always sufficient for it to work. So this is the link that you can use. I hope that you will be able to access the presentation later on. So this is what we did with Scrum, and now let's do the same with the Kanban method. Again, let's revise the basics. The core of the Kanban method is the Kanban system, and the Kanban board is at the core of the Kanban system. I'm sure that all of you know these basics. There's some sort of a customer, and then there is the pool of requests or ideas. This is the first column, and your customer enters points into this pool of requests. Then the team that is different from the Scrum team, that is differentiated in terms of their skills and functions, The team forms a chain. There's an analyst, there's the developer, there are testers. So there's a sort of a chain of command. And then every task is completed. Of course, you all know what it means to organize work according to this method. I hope that you know the key metrics used in this methodology, like cycle time, timing, and so on. What's key is that you need to observe this flow. This flow must be uniform, and everything is a task flow. You need to focus on optimizing the speed of the flow. The flow speed is always equal to the speed of its slowest link, and you need to avoid excessive workload on team members. So, request manager, the customer in Kanban terms, needs us to show what we can do, and the customer prioritizes tasks for us. We also expand the bottlenecks if we have to keep the flow uniform. Let's move on to the limitations of the Kanban methods. So the same slide that we used with Scrum, I crossed out some of the problems that are typical for Scrum but aren't applicable for Kanban. Because Kanban doesn't use sprints and does not use this system of values, and so on. So some of the drawbacks are removed, but there's no cross-functionality because there are roles in Kanban, so we don't need to have T-shaped employees as the core of our team. There's no problem with differentiating the team into developers and analysts and testers, for instance. In the meantime, some of the problems are here to stay, and there are many connections in the backlog, which is bad for the Kanban method. Of course, it's hard to prioritize, but it's even harder to tackle all tasks at the same time. So the more connections there are between the elements in the pool of requests, the harder it is to apply the Kanban method. So let's add a couple more drawbacks here. Because Kanban tries to use the paradigm that everything is a service and that every flow is unidirectional. However, this does not actually work in real life, because it's not always convenient to use this service paradigm. I'd like to give you a short example. Say you're organizing a wedding. I often hear that it's a popular example for coaches at training sessions. So there you go. You're organizing your own wedding. And it's a posh event that brings together all of your family and friends, say 300 people. So an immense, giant wedding. So you need to find a wedding, to order food, to come up with a scenario of the ceremony, to commission a band for you to play, to organize a ton of things. So there are two ways you can apply the Kanban method. You can set up a list of tasks and you can use 3 columns: to do, done, and in progress. Of course, you can do this, but it's not Kanban, because this does not add any clarity to your progress. You'll need to add some more columns, like you're considering the idea that payment is pending and so on. And then you will realize that different tasks require different columns. Say for the band, first you need to choose the band, then you need to make arrangements, then you need to pay, and so on. For catering, it's simpler. You approve the menu and then you just pay for the food and the food comes to you. So you have different tasks and different sets of columns for each task. So either you have to include the columns that are relevant for all tasks, and there are a great many columns, or you use different boards, or you use the primitive model: to do, in progress, done. But that's not Kanban. So this is the problem that you face, especially at the top management level, sometimes at the project management level too, but mostly this is true about top managers. If you're trying to bring the work of different teams into just one table, it doesn't always work. I heard a presentation from a manager who was proud to report that his top managers are working with 18 Kanban boards. Imagine that you have 18 boards on the wall and you're just staring at them and trying to figure out what to do. Is it convenient? I don't think so. So let's take a look at SAFE version 5.0. So this is an attempt to bring together Agile and Scrum. There's Scrum at the bottom and Kanban at the top. And the problem with the fact is that it's applied at the level of portfolio and idea generation. Again, if a manager is dealing with 18 project boards, and there is, say, an information dashboard that brings everything together, it's quite hard to process. Another difficulty is that the Kanban system only works with unidirectional flows of tasks, when nothing goes backwards and everything just progresses towards. Say, if a programmer writes code and gives it to the tester who tests it and sends it on to release, but if the tester finds a bug, they submit the code back to the programmer, so the flow is not unidirectional anymore, and there you have it, a problem. You can tackle this problem, of course. You can add another column, you can make testing a different process, but when you're working with ideas at the top level, ideas often move back and forth. We started with calling the band to our wedding, then we decided to replace it with a disco, and then we decided we wanted a circus bear to entertain the guests. So the process becomes very different, and your idea goes back from the payment stage to the first stages. And this is normal at the brainstorming phase. But this is something Kanban can't help you with. So the limitation of this method is that you can't always represent everything as a service, and not all flows are unidirectional. Let's move on to the PMI approach. I will try to generalize some of the things for us to be able to make it in time. So, the PMI approach. Again, PMI in 30 seconds. A very primitive understanding. So PMI was invented for situations when you can't see a deadline at the start. Say you're working at a bank and there is a new regulation issued by the government that starting January the 1st, you need to prepare your reporting, your accounting in a different way. And you need to be able to rework your systems. This is the crucial deadline that you simply can't miss. And you can't cancel the deadline or approve another deadline. And this is the approach based on PMBOK 6th edition and 5th edition. So the main point is that at the start of the project, you create a framework that resembles, say, an eggshell. You set this cutoff date that you can't miss, and within this deadline, you draft out plans. And as you progress with realizing the project, your plans become more and more specific. However, what you need to do as a manager is to make sure you stay within the boundaries of the initial deadline. So PMI deals with some sort of a rigid external deadline, not internal deadlines like Scrum or Kanban. A PMI book is rather large. It has over 1,000 pages. It's rather a labor-consuming approach. And we have this triangle of money, time, and scope of work. And you keep specifying your plans as you go, and you make sure they stay within the boundaries of these three factors. This is the classic PMI approach. What are the core drawbacks of this approach? First of all, it does not have the drawbacks that I enumerated for Scrum and Kanban. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't have its own drawbacks. First of all, there's a high entry barrier because it's quite hard to master, and it's quite hard to find a manager who's good at implementing it. PMI requires some heavyweight planning at the start. It takes a week and a half or maybe 2 weeks, which pays off eventually, but it doesn't work for short projects, say a month or 2 months long. However, if you have a long project with an extremely important deadline at the end, it works. What is more, PMI requires special planning and control software. Of course, there are a lot of tools to help you implement Kanban and Scrum, but it's easy to use Scrum and Kanban simply with a blackboard and stickers. This doesn't work for PMI though. You need a special software to plan and control because it's very hard to implement with Excel or Google Sheets. So there are some lightweight instruments available now, but you need some kind of specific software. A unique limitation of the PMI approach is that the team must be capable of peer reviews. Members of Scrum and Kanban teams do not try to figure out the deadline at the very start, which is quite different with the PMI teams. They need to be able to give their reviews, say, with the precision of maybe 50%. Not 100%, but 50% is a must. However, if you're working with a new team and you're broaching a new area, if you're walking on uncharted territory, which is not always the case, PMI is not the best choice for you. You should probably forego the idea of meeting any specific deadlines and opt for Scrum or Kanban instead. There are more problems, like insufficiently experienced managers is bound to turn the PMI approach into a waterfall because rigid management does not always work with PMI. It is a popular misconception that you need to be very strict to implement a PMI. It's not a waterfall, and you don't need to intimidate your team and be very rigid with them to make them follow your plans. And again, if the deadlines aren't very important, this approach doesn't pay off. So these are just the basic, essential drawbacks of the PMI method. If you're interested in exploring the basis of these three methodologies further, here are the books that you can refer to. If you download the presentations, you will be able to use the links, except for PM book, because this is paid for. And the other three books are available to you if you click on links. And just a couple more things, I'll try to be concise. Some more functions of the project office, apart from filtering the ideas. What's the next step? What approaches they can use to realize it? The project office takes stock of the organization structure. I'm not going to go into detail here, but the main idea is that there are functional structures that feature a very rigid hierarchy, say an army in peaceful times, sometimes banking structures, sometimes plants or manufacturing facilities. The information goes from top to down, and there are almost no information flows that go horizontally. All communication happens through the top managers. Only your superiors can assign tasks to you. In such structures, you can only use Kanban, and even that comes with a lot of limitations. Kanban is what will work. PMI is almost pointless in such organizations, with the exception of cases when the product owner is the top manager, and Scrum does not work here at all. It is doomed. The better horizontal connections there are, the better results can be achieved through PMI and Kanban. So weak metric structure and a balanced metric structure. PMI works, Scrum works well for project-based organizations with a strong metric structure. Because as you remember, there are no managers in Scrum. There's Scrum Master, and there are teams and there are product
компаниями,
owners.
где соблюдается правило один человек,
So
один продукт или один
when there
проект,
is one
и
person per
фактически
one
нет других
project,
начальников, которые ставят
one
ему
product owner
задачу,
for
и
one
команда
project,
может
and
самоорганизоваться
the team
по
is
целям.
capable of
Это
organizing
на этом
itself.
слайде только проектная структура. Такие компании бывают, продуктовые
And
компании
it
часто
often
есть, правильно.
happens with product
Но
companies.
вот надо понимать, что это тоже одно из
Scrum works
ограничений. И это
fine, but
тоже сводит
it's
проект
also
вниз.
one of the limitations.
Вот. Ну и,
And
наконец,
finally, some
когнитивные
of the cognitive
искажения.
distortions
Последнее скажу.
that
У меня
affect
несколько слайдов,
managers
я
and the team's
схлопну так, чтобы просто мысль
expectations.
донести. На выбор
As you
подхода,
select
когда вы
the
как член команды это
approach to
делаете,
running your
как менеджер
project
проекта,
as a manager or project
иногда даже
manager,
приходится бороться с
you
коллегами в проектном
sometimes
офисе. Часто влияет
experience a certain confrontation with your
сформированные отношения.
project
Популярен ли
office,
этот подход?
whether they
Нравится ли он
enjoy
людям?
working with this approach, whether it's popular, whether
Рекламирован
it
ли он и так
has
далее.
good
Вот. И это
publicity.
приходит к тому, что одни подходы
As a
используют чаще
result,
других. Да, в
one
России
methodology is,
чудовищно,
one
невероятно
methodology
моден
is used
скрам,
more than another one.
меньше мода на
Say
канбан,
in
хотя он
Russia,
гораздо более универсальный
Kanban
подход.
is less fashionable, so to
Было
say,
заседание PMI, сейчас
than
PMI на совершенно нормальном
PMI,
уровне. Я бы сказал, что популярность с канбан-методом в командах сравнима. То есть люди понимают, что это работает и
even
это
though
работает, давайте
teams
выбирать.
understand
Но
that
вот
both
планка
methodologies
популярности скрама
work.
задрана, хотя ограничений с ним больше всего. Вот. И
The example
пример
of
того,
how
как
you
можно
can
подход
choose
выбирать,
the
Кеннелин
program is
фреймворк.
this
Я, наверное, не буду сейчас о
Sinafin
нем
framework.
рассказывать. У меня есть отдельное видео на моем канале про Кеннелин фреймворк. Но Кеннелин фреймворк,
This sort of
видите, как он пишется, а произносится он Кеннелин.
framework
Это такая
is
штука, которая
something
подталкивает
that
вас к
pushes
неправильному
you
решению или
towards
подталкивает вас
the wrong
чаще
decision.
выбирать
It
не те
causes
подходы,
you
которые вам
to
реально подойдут.
choose the,
Слайд я просто
the
пропущу,
solutions
на моем
and the
канале.
methodologies that aren't
Последний тезис,
optimal for your
собственно, 3 минуты
situation.
буквально,
And
сворачиваем и
my
заканчиваем.
last
Спасибо за терпение,
statement,
коллеги.
thank you so much for your
Про то, что
patience.
хочу подрезюмировать.
Patience is the
Проектный
resume.
офис чем занимается?
What does the
Фильтрует
project
идеи.
office
И
do?
если
They
он фильтрует
filter
плохо,
ideas.
все
If
мы, в
they
том числе
don't,
бизнес,
everybody
ведь проектный
suffers,
офис тоже
and
умеет говорить
business
«нет».
goals are the
И
first to
должен
suffer.
уметь останавливать вовремя проекты, которые вот вы можете
The
работать над
project
проектом, который
office
будет
can
внезапно
also
остановлен.
halt
Не потому, что
projects
все вокруг дураки, потому что проектный офис в какой-то момент его остановил,
because
чтобы
they
запустить
need
другой проект.
resources to
Это
launch a different
обычно
project, and
нормально
it's
так
a normal
бывает.
situation.
Программирует организацию,
They program the
согласовывая, какие подходы
organization,
ей нужны для
choosing the
Scrum, Kanban и
methodology
PMI,
for
опираясь не
project
только на плюсы,
realization,
но и на минусы. Я
such
пытался
as
их
Scrum,
обозначить,
Kanban,
поэтому
or
они
PMI,
не
and
выступают
they
такими
consider
бредовыми
not
подходами.
only the
Ну и, наконец, работает с
advantages but also
менеджерами,
the
организовывает
drawbacks of
работу по
each
этим
of these
подходам и работает с
approaches.
менеджерами, подбирая
A project
подходящий.
office also works with
Убеждаюсь, что
managers
непонятно
to
этот
make
подход
sure
выбрать.
that they
Консультируясь с теми, кто
select
всю жизнь
the
работал
best
по Scrum или по
methodology
Kanban, было
and
масса
to
вопросов.
make sure they
Обратно
develop
мне тоже
and
верно, то
stay
слова как бывает,
motivated.
поверьте. Вот, обычный Scrum в Kanban вырастают. Вот так просто по опыту. И проекты вырастают, и люди. По
Using
PMI
Scrum
там
and
нужна очень простая
Kanban,
поддержка,
people
если
and
люди раньше не работали,
teams can grow
в этом
quickly.
случае
With
прям очень
PMI,
нужна
it's
работа.
rather challenging
И
because
вот
you need some
последнее,
initial
да, и борется с
expertise.
когнитивными
And
искажениями, потому что
finally,
люди часто прям хотят менять
project
один подход на
offices
другой.
fight
И вот последнее, что
cognitive
хочу показать,
distortions
когда происходит становление
that
проектного офиса,
prevent
когда
managers from
еще вот это
choosing
вот
the right
в ДНК компании не
methodology.
внедрилось, поддержка
And
менеджеров, она занимает
finally,
чудовищное время,
it
неимоверное.
takes a lot of
Потому что
time
все,
and
что мы вот
effort to
повторяли, там,
support
присутствует
and
информация с
to
точками измерения, в
motivate
целом все
managers.
очевидно. Вот каждая
This
синяя
is
точка– это подтвержденная моей
my
встречи.
schedule of
Это
meetings
встречи с проектными командами
with project teams. As you can see,
в
it is
ситуации, когда проектный
very
офис
tightly packed.
раскочегарился, заработал
So
полной
until
мощностью,
the
приходится людей
projects
активно
are
поддерживать,
running in full,
донося до них
I
те
need to
функции, которые
dedicate a
мешают
lot of
их в выборе
effort
той или иной
to make
методологии.
sure the
Кроме
teams
проектного
and
офиса,
managers stay
эффективность–
on
это мало
track
кто
and
компания
maintain a
обладает.
high performance.
Или есть какие-то отдельные
And
роли,
this
но
is
это
also a
достаточно
very
мало.
important
Либо проектный
function
офис
of the
распределяет,
project
либо
office.
выбрасывает
This is
людей каким-то
something
образом
that
через
keeps the
мастеров.
whole business running.
Вот. И
And to
завершая,
conclude,
если хотя бы эти вещи в
if a
компании
company
выполняются, те,
manages
на вопрос,
to
который был на
perform the
слайде,
tasks that I
управление
mentioned in
бизнесом, проекты с
90% of
командами,
cases,
эффективно
this is enough
взаимосвязаны.
to launch
Опять
a
же,
really
мой
useful
опыт
project
обычно
office.
взаимосвязаны это либо через
So
проектного
these
офиса, либо
three
через тех,
functions
кто
that I
эффективно
mentioned
несет
in the
вперед.
beginning,
И
project management, team
если
management,
проектный
and
офис
business
справляется
management,
хотя бы с
can be
тем, что
brought
перечислил на
together with
слайде,
the
в
help
90% случаев,
of a project
этого
management.
достаточно,
And
чтобы
this
вам
is the
работать
key to an
эффективно.
efficient
Вот,
business.
коллеги,
Dear
спасибо
colleagues,
большое за
thank you so
внимание. Я
much for your
заканчиваю. Я
attention.
буквально
Just
последние
one
минуты
last
говорить,
thing.
разговаривать чуть-чуть.
Thank you. I
Спасибо
didn't
вам за терпение.
write
Почти ничего не
anything. I
писал,
didn't
не
check the
смотрел в
chat.
чат.
I'm sorry
Возможно,
if I
просто
failed
определенные
to
точками
address
менялись.
any
Я
of your
надеюсь, что
comments or
то,
questions,
что
but
я рассказывал,
I
было
really hope
полезно.
that what
Коллеги,
I just said
если я
to
так
you has
сомневался, можете
some
добавить
value,
меня в
at
чат на
least some
почту,
value, and make sure
телеграм-канал
to
подписаться. У вас есть 10
subscribe to
секунд
my
по подсказке,
Telegram
переключу.
channel.
Меня
I
просили
will
скинуть
share
слайд с программы
some
следующего
more
спикера
knowledge to
в
you
Илья
that
Ильин.
you may find
Спасибо,
useful.
коллеги.
So thank Thank you, dear colleagues. Please don't hesitate to contact me with any questions or contacts.